Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 17 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. Loss and difficult loss is, of course, part of the human experience. It's part of every community across the globe, and it is, of course, part of our community as well. We have, over this past week, lost an extraordinary community member, a community member whose life she lived and the horror of her passing warrant special recognition. To that end, Ms. Chair Carter.
Good evening, council members, and Mayor Taylor. Thank you for giving me just a few minutes to speak. Thank you.
He's IT staff.
There we go. Okay. So, as I was saying, thank you for giving me just a few moments to speak about our former ICPOC Commissioner, Jude Walton. First of all, I just have to say the members of the commission are heartsick. That's really the only word I could think of to describe it. We're heartsick that this terrible thing could happen to someone that we all know and love. She was one of the original commissioners at the inception of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. And Jude had a tremendous impact on ICPOC. Her work will be guiding our work and our mission for a long time to come. Just a few things that she did for us. First of all, she brought wisdom and experience that was needed to launch ICPOC. She led in the establishment of our budget. She formulated interview questions for candidates. She developed the training requirements for the commissioners, and she hosted many of our meetings and training sessions. And I know you've probably read about her and you know what she meant to the community at large, but she meant these things to ICPOC. But I spoke to some of the commissioners and other people that worked closely with Jude. The one thing that everyone said about her was how kind she was. Her kindness was evident to everyone who knew her. And that kindness will be remembered. She was kind in her personal life, and she was kind in her professional life. We just don't understand how such a terrible thing could happen, but everyone who came in contact with Jude spoke of her kindness. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "You cannot do kindness too soon, for you never know how soon it will be too late." And I think about that when we think about Jude. And I just want to suggest that perhaps as we move into our moment of silence, that in her honor and in her remembrance, we commit to being a little kinder to each other every day. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're able, please stand and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish?
I'm here.
Councilmember Harrison?
I'm here.
Councilmember Song?
Here.
Councilmember Watson?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Ackman?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Cornell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Municipal government moves on. We have a number of introductions. Today, our first introduction, a proclamation of April 2023 as National Arab American Heritage Month. Please. Ann Arbor is of course defined by our values, defined by the extent to which we are a welcoming community. We are blessed in Ann Arbor to have people in our homes, people among us, people who comprise us from all over the world, and it makes us what we are. And in that light, it is my great pleasure to honor Arab Americans here in our community through the proclamation of National Arab American Heritage Month.
Thank you.
And I'll just read a little bit here and there. Whereas for over a century, Arab Americans have been making valuable contributions to every aspect of American society in medicine, law, business, education, technology, military service, and culture. And whereas upon immigration, they have brought with them to America resilient family values, strong work ethic, dedication to education, diversity in faith and creed that have added strength to our great democracy. And whereas the history of Arab Americans in the United States remains regrettably neglected and or defaced by misconceptions, bigotry, and anti-Arab hate in the forms of speech and crime. Whereas Arab American issues such as civil rights, harmful stereotyping, and bullying must be combated in the form of education and awareness. Whereas Arab Americans join all Americans in the desire to see a peaceful and diverse society where every individual is treated equally and feels safe. And whereas the incredible contributions and heritage of Arab Americans have helped us build a better nation, and I'd like to add a better city. Now, therefore, I, Christopher Taylor, Mayor of Ann Arbor, Michigan, announce that Arab American Foundation celebrates the contributions of Arab Americans to our community and declare April 2023 to be Arab American Heritage Month in the city of Ann Arbor. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, not at all.
Can I say just a word?
By all means.
Yeah. So, on behalf of the Arab American community, I want to thank you for your leadership and for your unwavering commitment to making Ann Arbor a welcoming and inclusive city for all. Your support means a lot to us, and we are proud to be part of this vibrant community. Once again, thank you for the proclamation, and we look forward for continuing our partnership with you in creating a better future for Ann Arbor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have another proclamation, if I could be joined by our indomitable Clerk Boudry. Proclamation of the 54th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week. The role of the city clerk, the county clerk, the municipal clerk is perhaps not well known to folks outside of the halls of municipal government, but the clerks here and everywhere are absolutely fundamental to everything we do. They are central to the defense and propagation. That's probably a word somewhere in there, and I'm sure someone will find one. Propagation of democracy, both here in Ann Arbor, that's protection throughout our various communities. Here in Ann Arbor, we are incredibly grateful to have a city clerk and a clerk's office that does outstanding work, that promotes elections, that promotes voting, that enables everyone in our community who wishes to vote and is allowed to vote to be able to vote. And we are just we're just so excited and proud about the work that is done here by staff. And so 'tis meet to declare this Proclamation Week. So I'll just read a little bit. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is a time-honored and valued part of local government throughout the world. Whereas the office of professional municipal clerk is among the oldest of public servants. And whereas the professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration and affairs of the office of clerk, through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings. Whereas it is therefore most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of professional municipal clerk. Now therefore I, Christopher Taylor, Mayor of Ann Arbor, do recognize the week of April 30 through May 6, 2023 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week and further extend appreciation of our profession. You see, I just always want to say participation whenever I'm thinking of Clerk Boudry. The appreciation of Professional Municipal Clerk Jacqueline Boudry and all the municipal clerks for their vital service that they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Clerk Boudry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to recognize my staff. I think they brought this to your attention. This is the 54th Annual Municipal Clerks Week, but it usually just quietly passes. But I have this wonderful, energetic, professional team, and they wanted this week to be noticed. So I appreciate their work, and I appreciate you taking a few minutes to recognize us. Thank you.
And now a proclamation of April 28, 2023 as Workers' Memorial Day. Ann Arbor, as I described earlier, is a community that is defined in many respects by its values. And one of its core values is the protection of the right to collectively bargain and the right of workers to come together to even the playing field between the employer, the manager, and the workers. The drive for workers to unionize, of course, has begun many decades ago and is not yet finished with respect to its advances for workers, their rights, their job performance, their ability to enjoy the fruits of their labor. One, of course, one often thinks of wages and other working conditions and benefits when it comes to the benefits of organized labor, but worker safety is among the core benefits, and the promotion of worker safety is among the core benefits of an organized workforce. I'm so delighted that Councilmember Iyer has brought this week to my attention, along with members of organized labor, and I am just delighted that we are able here to recognize the work that is ongoing to continue to promote worker safety in the United States. Whereas every year, April 28, communities and work sites around the world honor friends, family members, and colleagues who have been killed or injured on the job. Whereas in 2021, the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated that 5,190 workers were killed by traumatic injuries on the job, an average of nearly 100 workers every week. Whereas in 2021, 140 workers were lost through fatal workplace accidents here in Michigan. And whereas it is appropriate to honor the memory of the courageous and dedicated members of Ann Arbor's labor force who have been injured or disabled or have died as a result of workplace accidents. And whereas the City of Ann Arbor wishes to pay tribute to these workers who have died, been injured, or disabled, and we honor the contributions of Michigan's workforce and call for increased worker safety. Whereas the City of Ann Arbor renews our efforts to seek stronger workplace safety and health protections, better standards and enforcement, and fair and just compensation by rededicating ourselves to improving the safety and health of every city workplace. Now, therefore, I, Christopher Taylor, Mayor of Ann Arbor, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2023 to be Workers' Memorial Day in the City of Ann Arbor, and urge all citizens to recognize and honor the contributions of Michigan's workforce and to call for increased workplace safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Council for recognizing this very important day. My name is Robert George. I'm with Labor's Local 499 and also a trustee for the Huron Valley Area Labor Federation. We represent thousands of workers across the state of Michigan. As folks know from the proclamation, too many workers don't come home at night every single day across our great country and our state. And it's something that people need to remember as folks go about their day, that especially in the private construction industry, that thousands of people every year never come home. They never see their families again. And it's something that is a true loss, and it's something that local government can play a role in combating by prioritizing safety measures and contractors that invest in education and training, that you can have a highly skilled workforce that is able to confidently do the job well and safely, and be able to ensure that the whole community can rest assured that people can do the job well and make sure that no one ever has to experience the loss that some of these folks have had to endure. So thank you again for this resolution, and thank you for the work that you have all been doing. Thank you.
Mr. Mahoney, you have the con.
This is the one day a year that I get to stand and actually face you. This is wonderful. Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure to stand before you this evening to present the city administrator's proposed budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. Each year, we have to be intentional about what we're trying to accomplish with the budget. For this year, that is positioning for long-term impact. The budget's purpose is not only to clarify how we propose to invest the public dollars that we are entrusted to manage, but it is also necessary for us to be transparent about the direction that we believe we should take. I'm going to do a presentation for you this evening that touches on both things. Some notion of how we propose to invest public dollars, but also to talk about directions that we believe we should take. You have your budget books. You have my detailed budget message. Therefore, I will not stand here and read numbers back to you. I'll use numbers here and there just for context purposes, but the full details of all the budget is there before you. So we are presenting a proposed budget, all funds of $563 million, $666,000. The general fund, which is the bread and butter that makes up the services that many of our residents come to expect, is just shy of $130 million. The general fund has experienced 6.4% growth. State shared revenue is essentially flat at 1%, and our pension system is still among the gold standard in the United States. If you understand pension systems within that industry, if you are 70% funded, that is considered very good. For us to be at 90% is extraordinary. And so we're positive about having that. At the same time, we see pressure mounting. From a fiscal standpoint, we are charged with being conservative. So when we look at the fact that the economists are still forecasting a potential recession in the calendar year, when we look at the fact that state shared revenue is flat, that our marijuana excise tax receipts have essentially leveled off when we thought they would continue to rise, even though we have solid growth in the general fund, those other factors are there, and it's our responsibility to take note of it with you. It's not about doomsday. It's not about the sky is falling. We're not here saying the world is going to end, but we are alerting you that we see conditions in the future worth noting. Within 2 to 4 years, our recurring expenses will eclipse our recurring revenues. We need to pay attention to that. We pivot now to celebrating Ann Arbor. What you see on the screen is the logo that has been designed to recognize our bicentennial. As you know, I'm one of the people leading the community-wide effort to prepare for the celebration for next year. Dr. Missy Stoltz is heading up the internal city government preparation for the bicentennial celebration. Our plan is to celebrate across 12 full months. Not 1 month, not 1 week, not 1 day, but all 12 months. One of the things that we are proposing to do is to invest $200,000 in this year and next year's fiscal year budget in order to support the efforts of the bicentennial activities. It would help to cover the activities that city government is doing, such as a planned salute for former Olympians who are from Ann Arbor, an idea that was presented to us by an Olympian. Also would allow us to partner with Destination Ann Arbor to procure a photographer and a videographer who would capture the essence of what happens across the 12 months. This is a milestone within the city's history. We should capture it, and we need to preserve what we do for going forward. In addition to the $200,000 per year that we're proposing to allocate, there will also be additional leveraging that takes place through what we call co-branding. Co-branding are activities that you were already going to do, but in 2024, you will simply do it under a bicentennial banner. And so by leveraging activities that we already have planned, that will add another several $100,000 to the city's investment in bicentennial. We are also encouraging other organizations across the city to do likewise. As an example, this coming summer, the Art Fair is planning on beginning to co-brand their activity so that their artists will have a year's notice that next year is the bicentennial, which might influence some of the products, some of the artwork that they bring here to sell. One of the legacy projects that we would like to do is to create Bicentennial Park. We propose to take what is currently Fuller Park, rename it to Bicentennial Park, and place a number of new amenities within the park. This will not be accomplished in a single year. It will require investments from city government, but there are also opportunities for sponsorships in order to make this vision come to reality. Fuller Park, by the way, is not dedicated to an individual, so we're not taking a name away from someone. Fuller Street is dedicated to an individual, but Fuller Park is not. So the legacy project would include, I guess we got to go back to glasses. We want to do a universal access splash pad, geothermal systems to make the park carbon neutral. We propose to do a sculpture to former Olympians We want to do a sculpture garden to pay tribute to indigenous landholders. We'd like to see sensory trails put in the park given the proximity to Children's Hospital. We'd like to erect a shelter building for parks programming, and we'd also like to add community garden plots. Again, can't happen in a single year, would require investments from city government, but also sponsorship opportunities for organizations that may want to put their name on something that we're doing. Still within the focus of celebrating Ann Arbor is our sister city of Tübingen, Germany. This summer, we will be sending a delegation there to visit. They will host our delegation over several days. The pictures that you see on the screen are from Tübingen. They are proposing to send a delegation here next year for 6 days, and we're allocating $30,000 in order to cover the activities of the delegation while they're here. They are trying to plan their trip to coincide with some of the events and activities that are taking place in honor of the celebration. So sometime during the summer months, we probably will be entertaining their visit. We next pivot into supporting democracy. If you think back to the last election, there were two narratives at play. The long lines that were experienced in Ann Arbor and across the country, and the second narrative around voter integrity, the protection of the ballots, the protection of the count. In order to address this, we are proposing to establish an election center. An election center will be an actual physical location. The election center would be managed by the Office of the Clerk. It would give them space to process ballots. It would give them space to secure ballots. It would give them the opportunity to do all the things associated with ensuring we have a fair and proper election. Because our situation is one where we have to try to be efficient at all times, we want to be opportunistic around the opportunity that setting up the election center would give us. Therefore, we are also proposing to co-locate CTN as part of the election center physical footprint. Today, CTN is in a leased space. We are proposing to move it into a city-owned facility. We're also proposing to create the city's first emergency operations center. Historically, when we've needed to have an EOC, graciously the University of Michigan has allowed us to use their facility. But we are a large enough city where we should have our own facility. If you think just about this current calendar year, there were 3 occurrences where we would have activated an EOC if we had one. The visit by the Vice President, the ice storm, and the subsequent snowstorm. All of those would have merited the kind of attention that the EOC would bring. We would intend to pursue state and federal funding to equip and set up the EOC, not to use general fund dollars if at all possible. In order to establish the election center, this will be a real estate transaction, very likely to be 7 figures. In addition, it would cost us some $300,000 plus annually to operate the facility. So the image that you see on the screen is generic because we don't yet have a facility to put a transaction in front of you. We are working on that. And to address the long lines that we experienced on Election Day, the Office of the Clerk is proposing to have 9 days of early voting. The clerk's office is working in partnership with the University of Michigan and others to set that up. And one of the challenges that Ms. Boudreaux will face is how to convince young people to actually vote early instead of waiting to party in the line on Election Day. So good luck with that, Jackie. But we do want to do this to try to address the experience that we've had. We then pivot into sustainability. July 1 will mark the beginning of our collection of the Community Climate Action Millage. $7 million is what we propose to collect, and the staff, under Dr. Stoltz's leadership, will be working on expanding solar distribution, further weatherization of houses and neighborhoods, the expansion of EV charging stations around the community, continuing to study geothermal. She proposes, and what's in the budget, is to add 7 positions that will be funded by the millage in order to carry out this work. We then pivot into the neighborhoods. This is the first season when the road bond initiative is actually in full swing. So the local streets you see on the screen, Olivia, Norfolk, Tudor, Winstead, Dunmore, and more, will be covered under this year's iteration of the road bond program. Additionally, we have major streets resurfacing that will also be covered by the bonds. South State, South Main, Geddes, Earhart, Research Park Drive are all examples of major streets that will be resurfaced under this program. We acknowledge that as a community, we are going to go through major inconvenience. You cannot do accelerated street paving at the rate we are proposing to do it without inconvenience. But our mindset is progressing through the inconvenience because on the back end, we will have a much better community. In addition to the 2 slides I've shown you, we also have local resurfacing that will happen. This does not use road bond funds, and that includes Aberdeen, Belfield, Avon Road, and Bedford Road. Paving, paving, paving. A lot of that going on. But that is what we promised, and that's what we hope to deliver. For the past several years, our community has struggled with stormwater management issues around the city. The picture at the top of the screen is a local picture of what people experience that deal with stormwater management. This budget invests $250,000 to conduct drainage studies across 13 miles to allow us to get a better handle on the cause and potential solutions for people who have been experiencing this situation. We owe it to the community to find a way to resolve this issue. And these studies will enable us to do that. In addition, we are undertaking a solid waste program review. So, sort of rhetorically, what does better look like? So when you look at waste collection and recycling, commercial composting, oversized materials collection, we are trying to find a way to deliver our service in a better way. We are trying to be a factor in helping our city to become cleaner. This is also an issue that has been raised relative to downtown Ann Arbor. It is not solely the city's role to address this, but we do have a part to play. And by looking at our program service delivery to find better ways to do it, we hope to be a significant factor in showing the improvement. And now we turn to issues of public interest. First out of the gate is the tree line trail. The tree line is a long-term project. By all accounts, it will take more than a decade to actually build it out should we have that success. We are continuing our relationship with the Tree Line Conservancy. We have placed an investment in the budget to hire consultative help to work with the Conservancy on the project. However, the project has not yet matured to a point where it would warrant hiring a full-time FTE that would work all day, every day on nothing but tree line. When the project gets to that point, I would be supportive of the FTE, but it's not yet ripe. Our staff is working with the Tree Line Conservancy's own lobbyist and our lobbying firm to pursue state and federal resources to advance the project. Still on issues of public interest, the unarmed response. Last year, when the budget was passed, and subsequent to that, City Council appropriated $3.5 million in ARPA funding to provide the seed money necessary to get the program set up. In last year's budget, we set aside out of the marijuana excise tax $250,000 to support the initial investment. In this budget, we're proposing to take $250,000 this year and next year to continue to provide the necessary cushion for that program to have a very solid beginning and operating. We need to actually see 12 full months of the program working to determine what it actually costs to do a single year. And once I see how much it costs to do a year, then that would inform whether we bump that number up or look for another source. There's probably grant dollars out there that we can also pursue. And since we are aggressive about grants in Ann Arbor, it is something we would certainly look at. Which then brings us to 121 East Catherine Street, still within the focus of issues of public interest. On the screen, you see the rendering supplied by the Housing Commission. This is a Housing Commission project, but it's much more than just a building. 121 East Catherine is in an area of the city that historically was predominantly African American. And the vision for this project, aside from the 63 apartment units, was to take 2,300 square feet of space on the first floor and turn it into a cultural and entrepreneurial center aimed at reclaiming our history. The only problem is there was no money to build out the space. So this budget takes $325,000 from the marijuana excise tax to design and build out the space, an additional $150,000 for capacity building for the neighborhood-based organization that is needed to influence and inform what happens there. It would be not in our best interest to construct a building, have 2,300 square feet of space on the ground floor, say it is there to connect with the people whose neighborhood it once was, and have it be empty. So we want to address that as part of the construction. Finally, under issues of public interest, we need to have a solid workforce. Our workforce is too thin. We have just north of 800 people. The needs and demands for service from the staff continues to grow. We have had a situation where several of our classifications are simply not market competitive. Good employees have left here and gone to work for other municipal organizations because of money. There have been good candidates that we have tried to hire who have chosen not to come here because the salary is not competitive. we are investing $150,000 in this budget to conduct a compensation study. Our approach in the past has been, I tend to just call it a series of one-offs. We find a problem over here and we go and try and fix it. We find an equity problem over there and we go and try and fix it. We need to have a global understanding of where are the specific positions that are not market competitive and what will it take to fix them. Then we can devise a strategy that actually moves the needle. And that is what we are proposing to do with the 150 investment. This budget is adding 27 positions total. Those are detailed in your budget dictionary, but the majority of them are not going to be funded out of the general fund. 7 coming out of the millage. There are 9 positions for the Housing Commission. HR is getting a deputy director. There's a few sprinkled here and there. And then we pivot to improving the customer experience, which is broader than just customer service. I've talked to you before about our need to elevate our customer service across the organization. We have great examples of customer service every single day within the organization. Our issue is that we are not always consistent in how that service delivery happens. This budget invests $50,000 to help us get a consultant to develop customer service standards, develop training that we can use for staff to help us be a better organization across the board. That's one element of the customer experience. The customer experience also includes the 15th District Court. They have a courtroom recording system that is clearly on the way out. I had a conversation with the chief judge. She told me that the company that they bought the system from no longer exists. When they need to get parts to try to repair the system, they literally have to go on eBay to try to find them. That's why I put that on the screen. We can do better. So this budget invests $260,000 to replace that system. The significance of the courtroom recording system, they have a requirement to produce transcripts from every single court proceeding. If the recording system fails, they can't do that. It's not a position that we can afford to be in. And then that brings us to Supportive Connections, a program that you created with the last budget. One of the overarching goals of the program is to help people stay out of the judicial system. Yet we ask them to come into the Justice Center in order to access the services for a provision that we're trying to keep them out of. And if you look at the picture on the right, you see that the experience that someone has going into the office where they may be needing to impart very sensitive personal information is really not conducive. Between the boxes and the cramped space, it's simply not up to par. So with this budget, we are proposing to take a portion of the one-time opioid settlement money, do a construction project in the former Tasty Green restaurant space, and move Supportive Connections from the 4th floor of the Justice Center into the 1st floor of City Hall. I wasn't around for Tasty Green. I heard it wasn't, well, we'll keep moving. We'll keep moving. And then that brings us to council chambers. The technology in this room is dated. We are proposing an overhaul of council chambers. We need to upgrade the technology. which includes the microphones, this podium setup, the placement of monitors, the size of the monitors, all of that needs to be upgraded. The lighting, we want to put a mural in the ceiling. We want to have a standardization of the dais, things today we do not have. It is part of the customer experience. And when you think back to where I started, this budget is intentional about positioning for long-term impact. This is a long-term decision that we are proposing to do now. Which then brings us to the downtown commitment. This has been something I've been championing my entire time here. We've been engaging with stakeholders. We've been listening. We've been working with them. The number one thing that they said through our sessions and through surveys is we need to address the issue of public restrooms. And so I formed a public restroom work group. I gotta say, Mr. Mayor, when I told my granddaughter I was doing that, she thought I was kidding. Gran, what kind of job do you really have? So we've had people from various city departments, DDA, Destination Ann Arbor. We've been meeting for months. We've been talking with elected officials. We've been talking with appointed officials. We've been studying restroom models. We've been looking at restrooms across the United States. We've been looking at restrooms overseas. Our one mandate is that any restroom that goes in downtown Ann Arbor must be ADA accessible. And so as a result of that work, we have settled on the throne as the model that most fits Ann Arbor. It wouldn't look like what you see in the screen because you can change the exterior skin. But we found a company out of DC that has created an all ADA accessible model. We want to use the $200,000 that's already been allocated from ARPA to do a pilot to make sure that the unit does what they say it will do. In doing this project, you've got to look at the infrastructure needs, you've got to look at the amount of space you need on your right-of-way, access to electricity, the cleaning function, the whole 9 yards. As we got deeper into the project, we found that there are other institutions or organizations within the city that also have that need. AAA TA as an example. Where do bus drivers go when they need to stop? Because a lot of the private sector businesses do not want people to use their restrooms unless they're actually patrons. So the DDA is going to be leading a placement analysis to help figure out where these should go. More to come. The throne. Who knew? Still within the downtown commitment, there has been concern expressed about safety. And this is an area where I'm talking to you about direction rather than dollars that I'm proposing to allocate right now. Last holiday season, we put a walking unit in downtown and in Briarwood to go and engage with business owners, to engage with patrons, to engage with anyone that they saw. In Ann Arbor, we need to use a balanced solution, which means not a police-only solution. The direction that I would like to go in is to establish a walking unit that would have fire EMTs, supportive connections person, and members of AAPD. They would walk together. They would walk together to build relationships, to address issues, to provide resource information for those who need it, to address people who may be having some minor health or injury-related situation. It will take us some time to get there because we don't have a full complement within the police department. The fire department will need to add 2 positions in order to do this, and we need to figure out the capacity of supportive connections to be able to do it. But we're being completely transparent about the direction that we want to take. That then brings us back to the solid waste study that we want to do, because there is a definite link between clean and safe. And so if we can help get downtown cleaner, we can help with the presence of the walking unit. We can provide public restrooms. Now we are talking about solutions that mean something and bring results. Won't get there overnight, but this is the direction that we want to head. Which brings me to a case for revenue and the final section for me to present to you. From the graph, you see that we have more needs than resources. We are not unlike any other city. Our concern is, what can Ann Arbor do about it? We have needs for housing at all levels. We have deferred maintenance that we've been putting off, and the longer you defer it, the more expensive it gets. And we have capacity issues within the staff. We need revenue. If state shared revenue is flat, if the marijuana excise tax receipts have leveled off, the growth in the general fund is simply not sufficient to address everything that we need. I'll say this clearly. I am not talking about a tax hike. I'll say it again. I am not talking about a tax hike. I am talking about being more strategic with the assets that we have. Here are 2 examples. I would like to pursue the building of a market rate development on the promenade that you're looking at. A market rate development would generate revenue back to the city. We could put a development there and walk our own talk. It could be all electric. It could be a model for the kind of development we are challenging the community to come up with. You would simply capture the revenue from that development and then reimagine City Hall. We are never going back to a time when this building is full. If we tried, employees would just quit. People aren't going to work where they have to show up every day if they have a choice. And we want our organization to be the employer of choice. So by capturing the revenue from that development and reimagining this building, who knows where that could lead us? I also want to pursue taking what we call the Klein lot, which was assessed at $19 million some years ago, and I would like to see us pursue putting a market rate development on it, because then you could capture the revenue that spins off from the development and use it for deferred maintenance, for staff support, for service delivery that the public is demanding that we give them, that we struggle to do. Now, admittedly, the use of the Klein lot for market rate versus affordable may get me uninvited to a Thanksgiving dinner table. But the spot that we are in, we simply, in my professional opinion, which is what you want me to give you, we cannot afford to take all of our assets and do all these development deals with private sector and others where the city gets no money. The developers need something, they want something, And if we're deferring all of our return for 30 years, but we're cash poor now, the way I was trained, that does not work. Things to think about. Nothing for you to vote on, just direction. My surprise for the evening, there's $1 million in marijuana excise tax that I did not allocate. It's in the fund balance for your consideration. As your advisor, you don't have to spend it all, but I do have an obligation to tell you that I left it. Positioning for long-term impact. I want to thank the finance department, the staff in the city administrator's office, the men and women who comprise the service areas of the organization. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your city administrator. And on May 15th, when you vote, you don't really have to change a thing, just vote yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mahoney. You can. We now come to public comment. Comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers at public comment have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. We can have only one person speaking at any given time. Both here and online, you do have 3 minutes in which to speak, and our clerk will notify you either orally if you are on the phone or by the podium. Once you're at your 30-second mark, once your time has expired, in both instances, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Michelle Hughes.
Michelle Hughes is on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I'm excited to see the comprehensive land use plan on the agenda, and I hope that it's going to result in a plan that generates a lot of housing for the city to help us get out of our affordable housing crisis. And I'm really happy to see in our proposal that we are specifically trying to redress the segregation in the past and the segregation that we have in the present. So I hope we can come up with a good and equitable plan for our comprehensive land use plan. One thing I was a little concerned about is that I want to make sure that when we collect public input about it, that we are getting a representative sample of the, not just the people who live here, but the people who could live here. I noticed in the contract that it said that the city would be responsible for doing recruitment for focus groups for the comprehensive land use plan, and I wanted to make sure that we do that in a way that we're not just gathering the types of people who often speak about these topics, and that includes me. Let's make sure that we're talking to people who we don't normally hear from, and people who don't necessarily even live here right now, but could if we had a good comprehensive land use plan. So I don't know yet what the city's plan is for recruiting for this public engagement, but I hope that it is a good and equitable and representative one. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ralph McKee.
Mr. McKee, phone number 556. Go ahead.
Hello, Ralph McKee. Hello, this is Ralph McKee. Good evening, Fifth Ward. My first topic is CA 13, which would authorize paying the Bodman law firm another $150,000 to pursue litigation against Gelman. Since 2016, Bodman's been paid $900,000 to fight Gelman, and in-house lawyers have spent countless hours. That has accomplished virtually nothing. And pursuit of state litigation also unfortunately resulted in delaying asking for EPA intervention by almost 5 years. Approving more fees is throwing good money after bad. State law currently has no teeth. Further, pages 8 to 11 of the 2006 settlement agreement between the city and Gelman, negotiated by Bodman, bars many types of claims that we might have, and they might be time barred too. You should be getting a second opinion. It's not appropriate to have Bodman be the only one, since they'll benefit from going forward by getting paid even if they lose. And they did a bad job of telling you and the public about the infamous fourth CJ and the subsequent corporate process. Do you have a detailed memo explaining why these claims aren't barred? The agenda description does say part of the litigation will be enforcing the 2006 settlement agreement, that same agreement I just talked about. That's allowed under that agreement. Why couldn't that be done mainly in-house with minimal supervision from Bodman? It seems a relatively discrete contractual matter rather than a complex environmental case. Overall, this is a terrible waste of money, which Mr. Dohoney just said we need pretty bad. Next topic is the AC1 memo for a food trucks at the Commons. There are several positions in it which omit important facts, are misleading, or just wrong. Many of these are detailed in Julie Ritter's email to you yesterday, all of which I agree with. I'll focus on just a couple. The memo emphasizes the loss of parking revenue. However, it seems that there isn't any lost revenue if there would be empty spaces in the underground lots during food truck events, and there typically are. Next, why couldn't the food trucks be charged the same amount for the space they take up? Next, under a 2019 resolution, parking revenue was actually supposed to be used to financially support the Commons. That's been ignored, and to use a phantom loss of revenue as a reason not to allow activity on the Commons is insulting, really, particularly when the 2018 charter amendment approved was supposed to make this a Commons. Obviously, that charter amendment is inconsistent with having cars parked there permanently. This strained implicit argument in the memo would block any use other than parking. Finally, the statement that you need to get a detailed legal opinion rate commercial activity is another indicator of the author's bias against the Commons. Really, we've never had vendors allowed to get a permit on city property to sell things. Don't we have a street art fair? My band is scheduled to play at the Commons this Saturday. Does that violate the charter? Should I worry about putting out a tip jar? It's facetious partially, but really, do you think that the Prop A proponents, who by and large are the same people who want food trucks, are going to sue the city? This memo looks like just the latest attempt to stall, stymie any activity and kill the Commons. It's shameful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Lowe.
Alex Lowe on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast East Ann Arbor. I want to address several topics tonight, but before that, I'd just like to thank Administrator Dohoney for his fantastic budget presentation. First, I want to make a quick note on the comprehensive plan, CA 14, if I remember correctly. I'm glad to see progress happening on this, given how many of the PUD requests we've seen the Planning Commission recently have been for things that, frankly, should be allowed in the zoning already. The comprehensive plan should make a clear call for liberalizing our zoning so that we don't have all of this unnecessary process and require things to be PUDs. Let's fix that, because right now, a lot of Ann Arbor landmarks would just be illegal to build. So we should change that so that we can build the next generation of landmarks. Second, about the dioxane cure. It's clear to even the lay observer that the company who purchased Gelman Sciences is using every bit of procedural trickery available to distance themselves from this mess. So this is ludicrous. So far, the city has taken only tentative and timid actions about this. But given that the health of everyone in the city is on the line here, it's time to be bold. And finally, the memorandum to council about food trucks at the library thought. In short, I was flawed reading this. If I understand correctly, the Council of the Commons contains several members who were involved in the drafting of Proposal A. Yet the first meaningful attempt that they've made to activate the space is legally questionable under the language of that very proposal. Add to this the fact that it comes over 4 years after Proposal A was voted on, and the whole center of the city claim starts to look like, honestly, a bit of a damp squib. So I went back and watched a few Council of the Commons meetings, and I must say the experience has left me baffled as to how we have continued this for so long. What a Brobdingnagian squandering of the city's limited resources. At a recent meeting, the two council liaisons rightfully removed themselves from the call in protest of a
30 seconds.
massive breach of rules of order designed to prevent a single commissioner from monopolizing the commission's time. Unfortunately, that appears to have been the only consequence for this commission, despite numerous other breaches of civility and etiquette. So maybe it's time to rethink Proposal A altogether if this is truly the best we can do under it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Daniel Adams.
Good evening. Dan Adams, 1016 Daniel Street. The Council of the Commons was created in 2020 to advise this body and help plan the creation of a public park on the library lot. What it's become is a dysfunctional, deeply divided body that's neither advising you nor effectively advancing that project. The latest example of this is on your agenda tonight. That's a 9-page memo prepared by the city administrator, requested by the Council of the Commons on the viability of permitting food trucks on the library lot. Asking city staff to analyze whether food trucks are viable on the site is, to be clear, a desperation play. It's the best option among bad options to activate a site that everyone understands to be undesirable. This is something they proposed back in 2021, and to quote one member, they just needed a win. The logic of using food trucks to draw people to gather on an unimproved parking lot has it exactly backwards, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But it also won't work. A 10-year-old Parks Advisory Commission report explained to us, again 10 years ago, why. The site doesn't have foot traffic. It's boxed in on 3 sides, and it needs infrastructure to function properly as a public space. Councilmember Briggs, you will recall asking the library director at the Council of the Commons meeting in December about food trucks and activating that site with that activity. And he responded that they've had food trucks on that site, and they're not profitable. So this isn't a hypothetical. We've tested this. The libraries put food trucks out there. They've had to subsidize that activity, and that's the conclusion reached by the administrator. But the dysfunction of this body goes deeper than that. The last Council of the Commons meeting, the members were discussing a draft design RFP that isn't ready to issue despite 2 solid years of planning. It's badly overdue. It hasn't been socialized with city park staff, and it was attacked most of the meeting by a member of the council who spent an 8+ minute diatribe attacking it that survived inexplicably multiple points of order by other members. This council has outlived its utility to the public, and unless it's given a deadline to wrap its work up, it's going to continue to flounder. It's going to bicker about the terms of this RFP that it's never going to issue, and then it's going to attempt to justify its own existence by making work for city staff. Pass a resolution suspending the work of this body effective June 1. Give them a month of runway to wrap up their work. Then let staff and council members who have been supporting this activity patiently focus more of their time on actually meeting pressing resident needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Mr. Stolberg, phone number 534, go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lowertown in Ann Arbor. I'm calling about CA 14, the resolution to authorize a professional services agreement with Interface Studio LLC for comprehensive plan services. I am looking forward to this process, as I'm sure many of you are, and as many people in the community are. I speak from the perspective of someone who's been a real estate professional for over 30 years, including as a developer, and who is looking to the comprehensive plan and subsequent zoning changes for guidance on future development of properties that I, my investors, and my clients own. I participated in some previous comprehensive plan revision processes, such as the Northeast Area Plan, E2D2, and the Lower Town Comprehensive Plan, as well as observing comprehensive plan revisions that impacted properties that I developed in other communities. I've written and spoken many times to City Council and the Planning Commission regarding comprehensive plan issues and processes and other zoning matters. It is my hope that through this process that we are about to embark on, that the public, City Council, and Planning Commission will all gain better understanding of how planning and zoning is supposed to work. We haven't done a great job with it over the past several years. This is not just my opinion, but the observation of multiple experts. Our City Council members and commissioners haven't received the training and professional guidance that they, and we as their constituents, deserve. This has led to a number of votes based on narratives and speeches rather than on the criteria laid out in our law. An attorney recently asked me what I want to see from our city. My response was that I wanted honesty, intellectual honesty, adherence to proper process, respect for the law, both the letter and the intent of the law. We have fallen short of a number of times over the past several years. We seem to prefer our narratives to established processes, to adherence to the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, and to adherence to our Unified Development Code. Perhaps this extensive revision to the comprehensive plan will better educate us on how it should be done. I'd also like to mention a good article in the most recent Observer regarding development issues and also PUDs. Later tonight, I will speak regarding an application for a PUD that contains multiple misrepresentations, that doesn't comply with multiple federal and city policies, and that clearly violates the intent of the law, and that likely violates the letter of the law. Are PUDs good or bad or just a tool? It was
30
several years
seconds.
ago that some planning commissioners and city council members and their supporters' narrative was that PUDs weren't viable. That narrative was tied to the inappropriate loss of $9 million in affordable housing funds at Morningside Lower Town Development, and a similar failed attempt at upzoning while avoiding obligatory affordable housing funds down the block from their authority. I sincerely hope that the comprehensive plan revision process is a successful, eye-opening, and clarifying experience for us all. Process matters. I look forward to this comprehensive plan revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabi-Asafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. Mayor Christopher Taylor wants us to believe that he loves Arabs. Anybody who has been watching him act knows that he has most hatred for Arabs in this community. Mayor Christopher Taylor has more hatred for Arabs in this community that can ever be described. For this city council and Mayor Christopher Taylor to pretend they like Arabs is like a gangster boss sending flowers to his victims' funerals. Mr. Mayor, do you recall a few months ago, January 2023, when Arabs of this community protested and chanted, "Not a penny, not a dime, no more money for Israel's crimes"? Do you remember those Arabs, Mr. Mayor, for whom you have declared your love? Arabs in this community have for decades come to these chambers, have chanted, "Stop Israel, boycott Israel, do something about Israel. They are murdering us, they are torturing us, they are killing us." And you, Mr. Christopher Taylor, have silenced them. With the silence that you have created, you have supported Israeli crimes against Arabs. Those are Arabs they are killing in Palestine. Those are Arabs. And Mr. Mayor, your behavior has exhibited the most outrageous hatred towards Arabs in this community. When you said that you care about community issues when you were asked about Palestinians. You said this city cares about the community, excluding Arabs from this town. Well, there are many Arabs here, Mr. Mayor, and you have silenced their voices. By the way, do you remember in 2021 when 3,000 Arabs, do you hear me? 3,000 Arabs showed up outside this building chanting the same slogan we have here, no more military aid to Israel. They were right outside of this building, Mr. Mayor, and they were Arabs, those that you claim to love. And you have choked them. You have silenced them year after year, year after year. And Israel continues to massacre Arabs. Only in the past few weeks they have killed, they have tortured, they have sent people out of their homes. Pass a resolution that says we are against military aid to Israel. Otherwise, we all know that you hate Arabs, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Henry Herskovitz.
Good evening. Last October, I addressed Council about the Ann Arbor Schools' compliance with Public Act 170, which mandates teaching of the Holocaust. Since then, the school board was kind enough to provide me the requested information. I addressed the board last week and hoped that we were molding Ann Arbor students to become independent thinkers. I address Council tonight with the same concern. The textbook used in our schools is World History, Patterns of Interaction. In the section on the Holocaust, our student first reads, "The Nazis proclaimed that the Germanic peoples were a, quote, master race," end quote. I think we're all accustomed to that phrase. But I note that there's no attribution to that quote, no reference. Which Nazi leader said those words? There's no way for the student to know. If the student were equipped with books that challenge that claim, such as Benton Bradbury's The Myth of German Villainy, he could read that no Nazi ever said those words. And if the student were encouraged to do so, he could download a copy of Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler and could scan for master race. He won't find it, and he may be puzzled by the claim. He may even conclude that master race was merely wartime propaganda in which all sides took part. On the same page, our student reads that the beginning of the Holocaust targeted Jews due to German failures. Some Germans even blame Jews for their country's defeat in World War I, as if nothing could be further from the truth. But Alison Weir's book, Against Our Better Judgment, documents clearly that during that war, when Germany was about to defeat Britain and had actually offered a negotiated peace, Zionist Jews engaged in the process of getting the U.S. into the war on Britain's side. Prominent American Jews like Louis Brandeis and Felix Frankfurter worked behind the scenes to accomplish this task and were in fact successful at getting the Americans into the war, which ensured Germany's defeat. So what is ridiculed in the text our student reads is actually the true historic accounting of events. I encourage the board, as I do Council tonight, to provide our student with enough information to make up his mind independently and critically about historical events, and that he be provided with an array of viewpoints, not just one. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eric Ivanich.
Eric Ivanich on Zoom, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Eric Ivancic, and I live in the 3rd Ward. I appreciate this opportunity to speak before you tonight to talk about the center of the city. It's now approaching 5 years since Proposal A was passed, and the sad truth is that we have very little to show for it. The request for proposals is still being worked on. The space has still not been activated in any meaningful sense. City staff's analysis of what it would take to activate the space with food trucks and mobile vendors is damning. And the director of the Ann Arbor District Library has been very clear about the inherent challenges of using that space for library events. If and when the results of the RFP come in, any project approaching the drawing shared by Proposal A supporters will come at a cost of millions, or more likely tens of millions of dollars, and there's no source for that funding. The ballot proposal included no funding component. And when Proposal A was on the ballot, the key supporters and organizers of the initiative assured us that city taxpayer money would not be required and that private money would flow in. Yet it's taken us 5 years to finally put together the comparatively little funding just for the RFP. I am therefore asking City Council members to take a hard and honest look at where the project currently stands in contrast to what the public was led to believe and the opportunity costs of allowing this process to continue. The people of Ann Arbor deserve better. It's painful to think of what might have been. We could have had much needed housing. We could have had 1 or 2 floors of retail behind the plaza to create traffic flowing through it, making the space a space where people feel safe and relaxed. In other words, we could have activated that space. We could have had a public plaza that was privately maintained, and our city could have had revenue from the 100-year lease, from new property taxes, and from running a portion of the parking structure beneath. And our city's kids might have even had a seasonal splash pad and outdoor ice skating. Please, take that hard and honest look and act boldly and realistically and find a new path beyond Proposal A to reinvent and activate this space. I believe the public would appreciate the chance to weigh in again, this time 5 years wiser. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Greg Woodring.
Thank you, Council. My name is Greg Woodring. I'm the president of Ann Arbor for Public Power, and I live at 1012 West Cross. I'm here today to ask for one small addition to the budget that was just proposed by City Administrator Dehoney. Very much appreciate your excellent presentation on that. The council may remember that back in January of 2022, the council approved a feasibility study into municipalization as well as some other energy options. That study was funded in September of 22, and it's going to be finishing here in about June of this year. We do not know the results of that study yet. However, if that study is positive, the next step would be to get a valuation of DTE's assets. Ann Arbor for Public Power is suggesting that we reserve some amount of money in the budget to pay for that study should we decide to do it. We originally proposed $500,000 for that study. However, after talking to other communities that have done this study, they believe that it'd be considerably cheaper than that. So we're amending our proposal to $250,000 reserved to get a hard valuation of the assets. What that valuation will do is it will help with the city's legal proceedings to be able to go to DTE with a good offer for the price of their assets should we decide to go through with the acquisition process. Mayor Taylor actually just gave an excellent interview where he outlined the process for moving forward with municipalization on stateside. I'd definitely recommend all of you go and listen to that. And if any of you have any further questions or would like to discuss it more with us, we're always happy to talk with you. You can reach out to us at Ann Arbor Public Power at gmail.com. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Ellen Strongman.
Sarah Ellen Strongman on Zoom, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Ellen Strongman. I moved to Ann Arbor in 2018. I've been a resident in Ward 4 since I moved here. And I'm here today to talk about the so-called center of the city. The election where Prop A appeared on the ballot was the first election in Michigan that I was eligible to participate in. My parents raised me to be an active citizen, and I registered to vote as soon as I moved here and was eligible. I read all about, the various elections happening. I read up about Prop A, and I remember thinking, well, this is silly. It's obviously not going to pass. In particular, I remember reading a story, I think in The Observer, where they interviewed proponents and opponents of Prop A, and of the proponents picked were a couple who said that any building on the lot would block the view from their $500,000 condo. And I was really surprised when it passed. However, I have sadly not been surprised by the complete lack of progress that the so-called Center of the City Commission has made. I recently saw a number of tweets about the work that wasn't being done at this commission. People smoking and drinking during public meetings. Just last week, I was walking down Division downtown to meet a friend, and the only people I saw anywhere near that lot using it were a couple of teenagers on skateboards who were actually on their way to Liberty Plaza, because that seemed like a better place to be able to try and do, kickflips or whatever. City Administrator Dahomey's recent report outlining the many ways that quote-unquote activating the center of the city as a place for food trucks was thorough, honest, and, as a previous commenter said, damning. I would like to join several other commenters, both at this meeting and I think at others in the past, to ask council to step in. I think that we would all, as Ann Arborites, love to have places to gather. City Administrator Dahomey's description of a potential splash pad and community garden at the currently named Fuller Park, I'm sure has been met with lots and lots of enthusiasm.
30 seconds.
But it's also backed up by actual planning and expertise, which the center of the city doesn't have. We need to put our money where our mouths are and use them for things that are important. And right now, this boondoggle just isn't one of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandon Dimcheff.
Brandon Dimcheff on Zoom. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Brandon Dimcheff calling in from West Larrytown in Ward 4. I am also calling in to ask council to take action to address the lack of progress that we've seen at the Library Lane surface parking lot. In the nearly 5 years since voters narrowly passed the charter amendment to turn that parking lot into a public commons, there's been next to no progress towards that goal. The site remains a surface parking lot, the city is out tens of millions of dollars, and we're further behind in building much needed housing as a result. If Prop A hadn't passed, we surely would have had a free usable public plaza and a splash pad by now, along with $5 million more in the Affordable Housing Fund. The current state of the site, as emphasized by AC1 on tonight's agenda, suggests that significant resources would be required to transform it into a suitable space for even hosting food trucks, resources that we are understandably hesitant to allocate. The last meeting of the Council of the Commons, at that meeting, one committee member appeared to be fully baked while the committee discussed an, at best, half-baked RFP for the space. It also seems that Library Green has been sitting on funds for who knows how long that they simply chose not to spend to accelerate the RFP. If the beginning of a draft RFP and maybe food trucks is all the progress we've had in 5 years, it's time to cut our losses and move on. Whether we repeal Prop A entirely or replace it with something more flexible, I would like to see us put the issue to voters this year. The longer we wait, the worse it is for everyone involved. We must make a decision as soon as possible to be able to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Adam Gestevitz.
Adam Juskevich.
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich from the 4th Ward. I sent this to council as an email, but I wanted to call in and read it into the record. I read this astoundingly brutal, I might add, memo last night and was struck by 3 things. First, Proposal A was passed in 2018, and we're only now looking at options such as food trucks. We're coming up on 5 years. Everything about the center of the city and Council of the Commons, or whatever the correct style to refer to this is, has had a lack of urgency. We are coming up on the bicentennial with nothing to show for it. The Council of the Commons is still working on putting together a design RFP after nearly 5 years. I watched the most recent meeting, and it was a disaster, with one member interrupting and monopolizing much of the discussion time with a list of 18 vague amendments. Towards the end of the meeting, he appeared to, as our elders would say, toke up. Looking back on the minutes from previous meetings, it doesn't seem as if they report much back to council, and it isn't clear to me what they've been doing all this time. Second, $130,000 a year for food trucks. If we can even do food trucks with the poorly worded charter language Proposal A saddled us with, and if we can find operators willing to take us up on it. Third, and I'll just use the proposed ballot explainer text for this, quote, 4, the charter amendment does not provide a funding source for the development, maintenance, or programming of a park and commons, unquote. We don't have money to put food trucks here. Please, put an end to this charade. Don't let it drag on for another year or 5. Dissolve the Council of the Commons so they stop wasting staff time and the time of the 2 council members sitting on that body. They aren't seeming to act as an advisory body to council anyway, so I don't think we would be losing anything without their input. Pass a ballot initiative that allows voters to fix the mistake of Proposal A. Either strike the language entirely or, preferably, modify it so that the space can be developed to provide a public plaza, housing, and money for our city priorities, which could include affordable housing, climate, active transportation, unarmed response, debt service, etc. I don't want this issue to still be hanging over our heads while we are supposed to be celebrating the bicentennial. It's time to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Zecker.
Eric Zecker on Zoom, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Eric Zecker up in Ward 2. I'd just like to add my name to the folks who've already spoken about the center of the city tonight. I really think that it's time to re-examine this and put a ballot initiative to the voters to let us decide once and for all, after everything that we've seen over the past 4+ years, whether it's worth putting any more time, effort, and money into this broken initiative that we embarked on, ostensibly for a public plaza, but really to stop a development downtown. A lot of the supporters who remain after the development was stopped are still divided in purpose and scope. Other than a small flower bed and maybe a handful of events over the 4+ years, this parking lot is much as it was, with no real plans to change it anytime soon. I think the city administrator's memo is correct, and I think his plans for the rest of the city sound really well thought out and wonderful, and in stark contrast to what this group has come up with. It's time to cut bait. There's a dawning recognition in our city that we must adapt and change to meet the growing crises of climate housing. And if we're going to devote time and energy into something, then let it be that, not window dressing on a parking lot. The only way to change the use for this lot now is by amending the city charter and putting it to the voters. And it's within your scope as our city's elected leaders to do just that. And I urge you to do it. Do it this year. Put a ballot proposal forward and let the voters decide, either to maintain the status quo as it is now, or come up with a new progressive use of this plot that is right next to the bus depot near the library. Something better than a parking lot. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Mahoney, for your great presentation tonight. It gives me a lot of hope for our city.
Thank you. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I want to follow up on a report that I gave following the City Schools Committee meeting. I did receive constituent questions about the before and after care programs, which I submitted to the AAPS on March 15th, excuse me. I was referred on Friday to Superintendent Swift's April 14th superintendent update. If you would like to look at that, there is under the section Board of Education Full Spring Update, there is a link where you can refer to the PowerPoint slides. There's about 4 of them. Pretty quick read that would explain kind of the progress and the challenges that the public schools continue to face in terms of before and after care. This is something that I'm committed to continue working on as part of the city schools group, but that is an update to provide. I wanted to call attention to the fact that the Office of Sustainability, Leslie Science Nature Center, the Legacy Land Conservancy, the Huron River Watershed Council, and the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum have teamed up to create a really awesome Earth Day program on Sunday, April 23rd. It will be at Leslie Science Nature Center from 12 to 4 p.m. I hope to see you out there. I'm excited to attend. And then I want to thank staff for the AC1 memo. I thought that it was thorough and really well presented. I know that it's 9 pages. It was obviously a heavy lift and very thoughtfully done, so thank you to that, to staff for that. And then finally, just to remind folks that Councilmember Briggs and I had to reschedule our listening hour from last Sunday. It will be this Sunday, the 23rd at 4 p.m. at the A2AC. And so hopefully I'll see you there after seeing you at Leslie Science and Nature Center. Thank you.
Councilmember Song.
I was just thinking that whenever we have someone who tries to present, basically deny the Holocaust, I am redoubling my commitment as a board member of Jewish Family Services and making sure I donate $1,000 for every comment. So I encourage folks to take a look at our Jewish community and think of the good work they're doing. Speaking of JFS, I want to thank JFS for co-hosting an amazing Iftar celebration that was organized by Councilmember Aisha Ghazi Edwin, School Board Member Rima Mohammed, School Board Member, Trustee Crystal Dupree. We had over 200 people. I'm sure Councilmember Aisha Ghazi Edwin can speak more to it, but I was really grateful to see that coming together of communities across religious groups and in support of JFS's toy drive for refugee children. I want to speak a little bit to Jude Walton, who I knew in 2 capacities. What's not mentioned publicly has been her involvement in a group called Champions for Change. So let me just read a little bit about this program, and I hope that it will inspire folks to commit themselves to our community as Jude did. Champions for Change is a program that recognizes that in vibrant communities, all people are welcomed, included, valued, and nurtured. The racial disparities our communities face, though, prove that we're not there. Champions for Change inspires and cultivates leaders as we all work toward a co-liberated future. Together, we can find new ways to disrupt the many forms of racism. Our community of practice is a space for imagination, healing, experimentation, and transformation. Leaders of color are nurtured and supported as they grow. White leaders learn ways to wholeheartedly leverage their power and privilege for justice. Together, we're laying the groundwork for systemic change in our communities. I hope as folks remember Jude's impact in our community, we can also uplift these efforts that will continue, and that as a champion for change, especially here at the table, we can be inspired by your work. Thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I wanted to continue the comments around remembering Jude Walton. I was not one of the fortunate community members that actually knew her personally, but I've learned a lot about her in the past few days. She was a Fifth Ward resident, and I know the community at large is mourning her, and her neighbors are as well. It was a horrifying event that's happened, and people are heartbroken and traumatized, and it's going to take us some time to get through this. I would like to thank the Ann Arbor Police Department for their quick response to this incident. The fact that we have a suspect in custody is a testament to their good work after this horrifying incident. transitioning more to talk about the Ann Arbor Police Department, I just wanted to draw folks' attention to the annual report that's on our agenda tonight. It's the first one since 2016 that we've had, so I would like to thank Interim Chief Metzer for preparing that. That was something that I had mentioned that I was interested in when I first came in and onto council, and so I'm really excited to see that on our agenda tonight. So thanks for that. And finally, I guess I would also like to just note that it's pretty horrifying to hear a Holocaust denier here in the council chambers.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. I wanted to let people know that there's a public meeting coming up for the South 7th Resurfacing and Water Main Relocation Project. That's planned to happen next year. It got postponed back in November because City Council directed new designs for this. So the meeting is on Tuesday, April 25th from 6 to 7:30 at the Pittsfield Branch Library. The meeting will give the community an opportunity to discuss changes. They'll have the chance to weigh in on road safety improvements through discussion and group exercises.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the proclamation tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for doing that proclamation for Workers' Memorial Day. As the daughter of an electrician who ran, big construction sites throughout my childhood, I grew up understanding the just incredible critical need for safety and following OSHA guidelines on job sites, and how it made sure that my dad made it home to our family every night. And unfortunately, as was noted by the labor representative, that doesn't always happen. And even in our own community, we just had an accident in early March where a worker fell 40 feet from a construction site, was critically injured. We haven't seen any updates yet, but I'm following that. The OSHA investigation is ongoing. When that comes out, and regardless of that particular outcome, I'm going to be working with our city attorney's office and our staff to see what can we do as a council, as a body, to improve worker safety in our community on private construction. We've already done quite a bit for public construction with our new best value contracting policy. But in terms of private construction, the only avenues that we have are through the building permit process. And so, for example, if this particular contracting company is found to have been negligent leading to that worker's fall, that contractor should not be able to work in Ann Arbor for a time. And so I'm going to be pursuing that in the future. So thank you again, and that's it.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. So I wanted to follow up on what CM Cornell also shared about just a report out from the City School Committee. We're continuing to also work with them. I believe that they have started again the AAPS Transportation Safety Committee meetings. And a few people have reached out about whether there is a meeting tomorrow night. It is a working group meeting, not a typical board committee meeting. Public comment and attendance is open. You can go to the main conference room of the Ballas Administration Building at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And then a time for the next meeting will be announced soon. I also wanted to share some thoughts about the tragic passing of Jude Walton. I didn't have the privilege to know her, but my heart goes out to all those who knew her and who loved her. I hope that after this horrible tragedy, we can honor her legacy and her work, which was really about bringing people in and providing support to those who are most marginalized and vulnerable in our community, not leaving them behind. That means providing resources for those who are housing insecure, which she worked to do, experience substance abuse disorder, mental health, illness, while also not, promoting a narrative that people with mental illness tend to commit more crime, because actually they tend to be victims, not perpetrators of crimes. I also want to express my disgust about the Holocaust denialism that's happened here tonight. I think it's abhorrent. And I just want to, again, say that I stand by the Jewish community in our city, and I want to thank them for helping us to do the work we did to plan that amazing iftar event. So thank you.
Councilmember Edina.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I wanted to just express my gratitude to Administrator Mahoney and all of our staff for all of the hard work that's gone into the budget thus far. I know that we are in the middle of this process and there's still some work to go, but I know that a ton of work has gone into this, and so I just want to thank everyone who's been putting work in to date. I just also wanted to draw some attention to some work from the Renters Commission this past weekend. I know a couple of us were able to attend their first in-person listening session that they held at Sculpture Plaza this past weekend. We heard it from probably about 20 local renters, many of them actually low-income seniors who came out to share some of the challenges that they're facing. And I just wanted to make sure that anybody who wasn't able to attend in person, if you are still looking to share your perspectives and thoughts about priorities that the Renters Commission should be working on, if there are particular challenges you're facing, you can always reach the commission at renterscommission@a2gov.org. And also just wanted to thank Commissioners Else and Tibbetts for hosting the event, and I know Chair Farah, who put a lot of work into spreading the word about it as well. Thanks.
Councilmember Watson.
I just want to echo some of the comments of my colleagues. I was not fortunate enough to know Jude Walton, but I heard about her passing just before the start of the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board meeting last week, and I couldn't help but reflect on the work that Avalon continues to do in our community. Jude was Avalon's Director of Employee Experience for the past 14 years, and it's just evident in the start of my service on that commission and my service on City Council, the work that that Avalon continues to do for the least fortunate in our community here. I also want to invite Ward 2 residents to my coffee hour this Sunday, April 23rd at Sweetwater's on Plymouth and Green. That'll be this Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Just want to say a few things in regards to the tragedy with Jude Walton. This is a traumatic time for our entire community. Potential fears could be potentially heightened at the moment, and there will be temptation among some to hold up Jude Walton's death as a call to arms for communities to pull back on initiatives such as affordable housing that work to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty. We have so many stories and data about the positive impacts of having a home on the lives of children and adults. We're not going to let what occurred, as horrific as it was, derail the decades of work that she engaged in and those that she advocated for. What we must remember is that this is the act of one individual, a terrible, horrific, and unimaginable act. We must not use this individual act to foster hate against multiple groups, people of color, the unhoused, returning citizens, people with a mental illness, and those that suffer from a substance use disorder. The best way for all of us to honor Jude, who was a pillar of our community, is to lift up the cause of affordable housing, which she spent 14 years fighting for. We can honor her legacy and uplift her spirit by supporting the work that she did and by supporting initiatives that provide housing, which everyone deserves.
Further communication from council? For my own part, I just want to mention briefly, it's entirely right and proper that we here at the table, from the podium with Chair Carter and throughout most all the community, have emphasized Jude Walton's good works, have emphasized the social harms that she devoted herself to combating, and taken her death as an opportunity for us to redouble our efforts in those regards. That is, I think, should be and will be our primary, the primary result in the community of her death. I would also like to engage that it is another instance in which, violence has created harm and heartbreak, and that is what it wreaks, and that is what I think we as a community need to continue to work to counter, whether through education and services, and broadly speaking, to the creation of a culture of kindness and support that condemns violence, that condemns sexual assault, that condemns the harms that they create. I too would like to thank the Ann Arbor Police Department, one and all, for their swift, secure work in this regard. They, have I think done us all proud here. We as a community are traumatized, but we are, I think we're secure in knowing it, at the very least, that a suspect has been identified. The judicial process will run its course, and we'll see what is the end result. But for my part, in any event, I am very grateful for the work that has been done. Speaking of violence, we have not had physical violence here at the table, but we have had rhetorical violence in our chambers, yet again with anti-Semitism and Holocaust denialism. Although it does not affect an immediate and proximate physical harm, it does create harm in the community, and of course leads to physical harm over the course of time and time again. It is entirely and without reservation beneath contempt. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointment that was presented to City Council at the April 3rd, 2023 regular session to the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, Elizabeth Gerber. Can I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Song. Discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Watson.
I'd like to pull CA 11.
Councilmember Dish.
I'd like to pull CA 13 and 14, please.
Further discussion? Councilor Ackman.
I'd like to pull CA 9.
Further discussion of the consent agenda? All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA 9, 11, 13, and 14, please say aye. Opposed? It is approved with 11 council. The consent agenda is approved with 11 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA 5, CA 6, CA 10, CA 11, resolution to accept an easement for public right-of-way at 660 Earhart Road from the Toll Northeast 5 Corp. Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of CA 11. Councilmember Watson.
This item relates to the Earhart Improvement Project. There's an existing sidewalk built by the developer within the this right-of-way easement. Plans for the Earhart Improvement Project, which will come before council at a later date, include extending this sidewalk north to Glacier, which will ensure safe walking routes to King Elementary School. We've heard a lot of feedback on this project, including concerns about trees in the project area, and staff met last week with the leadership of the Earhart Village Homes Association to discuss project details. CM Song and I are pleased to report progress towards a plan that will move curbs to extend the sidewalk, removing fewer trees. The design has not been finalized, and we will continue to communicate with residents as more details become available. CM Song and I will meet with the Earhart Village Homes Association this week. And I'd like to express we are grateful to staff, especially City Engineer Mr. Hutchinson and Project Manager Mr. Bailey, along with Attorney Frost, for their work on this project and for incorporating community feedback.
Further discussion of CA 11? All in favor? Opposed? CA 11 is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. CA 13, resolution to approve the 9th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement with Bodman PLC for legal services relative to 1,4-dioxin from Gelman Sciences, Inc., DBA Paul Life Sciences, the amount of $150,000. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of CA 13. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. This amendment is necessary to support a new lawsuit against Gelman to enforce a prior settlement. The lawsuit seeks to ensure that Gelman complies with its obligations under the terms of the 2006 settlement agreement between the city and Gelman. That agreement required Gelman to install monitoring wells to detect dioxane near the Montgomery Street well, which was previously used as a source for the city's public drinking water. If concentrations of dioxane in a first series of these monitoring wells exceeded 1/2 of the residential cleanup criterion, Gelman was supposed to install a second series of these wells. When the state of Michigan reduced the dioxane drinking water cleanup criterion from 85 parts per billion to 7.2 parts per billion, that trigger became much easier to reach, and indeed it was reached. And so Gelman was supposed to install a second series of these wells, and it did not. So Gelman refused to do what it had said it would do, and so that fact establishes that it is both timely and prudent to enforce the city's rights to have the second series of wells installed by litigation, which is what this amendment supports. These wells are important for the residents of Ann Arbor because they provide a warning system for contamination moving toward the northwest supply well, the Montgomery Street well, and there is money involved. If it becomes clear that concentrations of dioxane in the Montgomery Street well are so high as to disqualify this well permanently as a source of residential drinking water, then Gelman may be required to make a significant payment to the city. So, it should be clear why the amendment to this contract is necessary. It will support a new lawsuit to hold Gelman to the terms of a settlement that courts have already imposed, that Gelman has already agreed to, and that may result in a significant financial benefit to the city.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you to Councilmember Dish for raising why this is so important. Obviously, we all know that protecting our water supply is something that is of utmost importance to our residents, and this is also something that is of particular importance to the folks in the 5th Ward, of whom the plume runs directly underneath our homes, and these monitoring wells will be installed within the 5th Ward. So I am enthusiastically supporting this amendment.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. CA 14, resolution to authorize a professional services agreement with Interface Studio LLC for comprehensive plan services in the amount of $699,110. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of CA 14. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. So the Planning Commission received, or the city received, 7 proposals for the comprehensive plan, and they have selected Interface Studio, which is a a well-established, for 20 years, planning outfit out of Philadelphia. They'll be working with a local team consisting of Smith Group, Ninigrit Partners, and Access, which is actually and Access, I should say. It's anticipated to be an 18-month to 2-year process. And I just want to pick out a few things from the resolution, and I want to also leave room because I think others may want to speak to this. But the resolution that Council will be voting on tonight instructs several things to happen from this planning process. First of all, incorporate A20. We want to make sure that our comprehensive plan process carefully considers and implements the portions of A20 that are applicable to land use and development activity in the city. The next is to open up opportunity. In the context of our largely developed city, we expect our comprehensive planning process to make recommendations of adding new homes and densification in single-family zoned areas and other areas and zoning district. Simplify, that's number 3. Our current comprehensive plan is vast. There are 13 documents, I think. I forget the last time I counted it. We would like this team to develop recommendations and policies that promote fewer zoning districts or categories, that contain more flexibility for reuse and adaptability over time, and that reconcile the differences among these many, many documents we currently have. 4 is value centricity. A proposed land use framework should emphasize values over specified land use limitations where possible. And finally, engage in repair of a history of exclusion. We expect the team to develop recommendations and policies that undo and/or seek to repair past land use policies and regulations that resulted in the scattering and exclusion of people based on race, income, or other characteristics and other inequities. That's all I'll say, but...
Further discussion? Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you for that introduction, Councilmember Dish. I looked at the proposal, and I guess I just wanted to call attention to the fact that it points to equity as a focus in the planning process, and in particular, equitable engagement. I think one of our public speakers earlier spoke to this issue, but making sure that voices that are frequently left out of the conversation are heard and represented in the plan. We tend to hear from the same people, but I think we want to be hearing from members of our community that don't necessarily know about city council meetings or watch what we discuss. And that includes people who have been priced out of our community and would like to live here. They also cited our Equitable Engagement Committee, which I also appreciated. Just shows that they are, attuned, I think, to our values as we move forward. I also wanted to address a question that came up at my coffee hours this weekend, which was, is the signal of a comprehensive plan mean that City Council, or I guess me personally, intends to slow down development in the meantime or slow down any kind of process? And I guess I just wanted to say, I don't, regard this as a stopping point or a slowdown point. This is something that we have to do, and we have to do it quickly, but I don't think that it should slow down other things that are in progress.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I'm happy that we are at this point again. We were at this point in 2019. And Mayor Taylor's the only one who's been here twice for this update. So I did serve on that. I was on Planning Commission at that time and serving on the committee that went through another RFP process, made a recommendation. It actually happened to be the same consultant that was recommended 4 years ago now. So it's interesting that they have risen to the top twice in a row, and reassuring. As Councilmember Dish mentioned, this is currently we have a vast array of documents that make up our comprehensive plan. It's actually 8 current documents and 18 resource documents, so even more than the 17 that she mentioned. But they are often conflicting and out of date. So they, as our memo mentions, are based on planning work that was, for some of them, 30 years ago. So this process is long overdue. I'm excited to see what we end up with at the end of it. But basically, I mean, this is an ongoing process. And at the end of this, we're going to have work to do in terms of how does this influence the update to our ordinances. So I'm excited to see what our vision is that our community has based on the values that we have. But there's a lot of work in front of us. I had hoped to be at the point where we would be doing those ordinance changes about now, but we'll be doing those in a couple of years.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. CA9, resolution to rescind Resolution R22374 for a lease agreement with Great Lakes Air Repair DBA Beacon Aviation, and to approve a lease agreement between the city and Heron Aviation Group LLC for a corporate hangar located at the Ann Arbor Municipal Airport. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of CA9. Councilmember Ackman. Sorry. Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you. We have a staff introduction for this item. Mr. Kohanek is available and will handle the introduction.
Yes, good evening. My name is Matt Kohanek. I'm the Fleet and Facilities Manager for the city, as well as the Airport Manager for the city, and I appreciate the opportunity. I did receive 4 questions related to this agenda item from council members, and I'd just like to go through those. First question was, what happens in the event that Heron Aviation isn't able to find a new FBO partner? And it's good to report that Heron Aviation has actually already reached an agreement with Ace Aircraft to provide FBO services in Ann Arbor. Ace Aircraft, which is one of the 2 remaining proposals from the RFP 2119, has purchased the materials, supplies, and equipment from the outgoing FBO Aviation Center. Aviation Center has also transferred their 6 leases for adjacent T hangars to Ace Aircraft. Ace Aircraft is owned by Aaron Enzer, a longtime pilot, flight instructor, and tenant at the airport. He's also currently the president of the Ann Arbor Flyers and operates 2 local businesses. Second question was, what criteria were part of the original recommendation to grant the lease to Great Lakes Air Repair DBA Beacon Aviation? So the Airport Advisory Committee has been trying to find the right FBO operator for the airport over a period of about 3 years through 2 RFP processes. The proposal from Heron and Forschler, which ended up being the Great Lakes Air Beacon Aviation, was recommended by the Airport Advisory Committee for several reasons. The proposal benefited users of the airport by providing a competitive FBO environment. The proposers brought a good mix of business experience, and they were providing some new services to ARB, and they bring a solid financial resources to complete the required improvements to the building with no airport contributions. The third question was the Airport Advisory Committee part of this decision? If not, why? The Airport Advisory has been an active participant in the plan to redevelop this site for many years. Members, including those who served on the subcommittee that was developed for this specific proposal or process, have gone through 2 RFP processes, reviewed multiple proposals, and interviewed multiple proposers. When the preferred proposal of RFP 2119, the last proposal that we did, Whisper Aviation, withdrew their application, the Airport Advisory Committee tasked the subcommittee to come back with recommendations on how to move forward. That recommendation included reevaluating the remaining 2 proposals from RFP 2119 and opening up to other potential proposers that had expressed interest once they became aware that Whisper Aviation withdrew. The subcommittee reevaluated the remaining proposals from Solo Aviation and Ace Aircraft and the newly received proposal from Heron and Forschler. The subcommittee recommended to the Airport Advisory Committee, who concurred at their May 18th, 22 meeting, to move the Heron-Forschler proposal into the due diligence phase, and if it didn't make through the due diligence, then to pursue the proposal with Ace Aircraft. So as it relates to this most recent activity, the request from Dale Forschler to put the lease in Heron's company name, Heron Aviation Group, came on March 22nd of this year, a week after the Airport Advisory Committee's March meeting, and nearly 2 months before their next scheduled meeting. While a special meeting could have been called with discussions with the chair of the committee, the inclusion of Ace Aircraft into the Heron Aviation proposal was consistent with the recommendations previously made by the Airport Advisory Committee. ACE is a known commodity. They were a known commodity, and they were a known proposal to the Airport Advisory Committee, having been already an applicant through the RFP process. The last question was, what's the standard process for recommending lease agreements with a particular partner? There's really no established process for this situation at the airport. Most of our leases are T-hangars, box hangars, and some private hangar land leases. These are formatted leases. They're standardized. They've been developed by the city attorney's office, and at some point in the past have been approved by city council. Those are the bulk of the leases that we handle. Those are handled administratively, and they usually are filled off of an operating off of a waiting list for hangar space. What City Council does see is lease extensions for corporate hangars, some amendments, those type of things when necessary. We don't see a lot of that because we don't get a lot of turnover, but when we do see it, it's typically an amendment or a renewal of an existing lease for the same tenant. This situation is very different in regards to, actually in the 16 plus years I've been the airport manager, it's the first time I can remember that we've brought in a new corporate entity for a corporate hangar. Again, most of the time, actually, since I've been here, all the time, it's just been renewal or amendments to leases, the same tenant staying in the same building. So this one was a little different situation, and again, it's just not one, it's a unique situation, not one that they have a standard process for. So that was the response to those 4 questions that I was provided. I'd be happy to address additional questions the council may have.
Thank you. Councilor Bracken.
I just wanted to express my appreciation for the very thorough response. Basically, I just knew that the FBO experienced partner from the last one seemed to hold a lot of weight, so I'm really relieved to find that there is a new one that's identified, and thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, since I serve as one of the liaisons to the Airport Advisory Commission, I just wanted to also say thanks for those clarification about the changes. I think it's important to note that in terms of the changes that we're seeing before us tonight, we are really just seeing fairly minor changes in terms of the contract, in terms of name and date. I think there's one other small tweak, but in terms of the actual contract that we approved back in November, it's an identical contract. Otherwise, I appreciate the transparency of this process, and I think the fact that we as council have are approving this contract, well, we're going to approve the contract, but have, this is coming back to us as an amendment. The fact that it's gone through the Airport Advisory Commission, it's been we've seen due diligence at every stage of the process. So I certainly don't have any concerns, despite some comments that have been made in the community on that point. In terms of the process, just to reiterate, there were 4 members of the Airport Advisory Commission that have served on this review committee throughout the process. So the Airport Advisory Commission's been engaged in that. And then one of the great things about this that I think I just want to make sure that we all recognize is that we are getting $200,000 worth of required building improvements to this hangar at the airport. So that's money that we aren't spending as a city to improve our facilities, but rather a private entity is coming in and making in that investment in our facilities and our hangars. And at the end of their lease, they will not own that building. So those are investments that they're making on city property and then providing services for the next 20 years. So it's great for the folks who are using the airport and great for the city.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. We now come to a public hearing. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific item on the agenda, that is to say, the specific subject of the public hearing. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers, both here and online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so in each instance, pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining, and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning, rezoning of 2.5 acres from PL, public land, to PUD, Planned Unit Development District. 415 West Washington, PUD zoning and supplemental regulations. 415 West Washington. Is there anyone in the House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Please just come on up.
My name is Ann Colvin. I'd like to talk to you about the development of 415 West Washington. Just a few brief comments. The proposed building is too tall. Please approve a lower height limit. Please consider alternatives to a high-rise building. I believe City Council should represent and support citizens who live near any new development. Thank you.
Thank you. Just come on up.
First of all, I wanted to say how sorry I am for those who knew and loved Jude Walton. I'm very sorry for your loss. Good evening. My name is Muffy McKenzie, and I live at 217 3rd Street. I am one of the houses in the old West Side Historic District that abut the 415 property. I do want to say that I have a problem with the PUD change, and it's mostly because I think that the point about remediating the contaminated brownfield site. I've asked this many times. Where is the urgency to clean up these dangerous carcinogen toxins? Sorry, I'm a little nervous. The city's known about these toxins for many years. Now we found out that there are more and a plume that is spreading. Why are we waiting for a would-be developer? Why aren't we cleaning these toxins up yesterday? We were told that it'll be too expensive. Well, how much? We've been asking for months the data and the facts on the cost and not received any straightforward answer. We've heard millions. We've heard 1 to 3 million. But how much? Where is the transparency on this? How do we know it's too expensive if we don't know how much it's going to cost? Also, hasn't the DDA been collecting money for years on this parking lot? Where is that money? Why couldn't some of that money be used for the cleanup? What about the millions of dollars that the federal government gave to the city and what the city received? One of the council members on the Planning Commission a few weeks ago said that that money was being used for worthy projects. Well, what could be more worthy than the health and safety of our 10 hours a day who have toxins nearby? I don't know. Cleaning up the contamination now seems to be the most worthy item on my agenda. I don't know what you all think about that. What it boils down to is that 415 is a city-owned property. The city and the county contributed to the contamination over the years. The city has a duty and a responsibility to its residents to clean it up, and clean it up now, not waiting for some would-be developer. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, we have a number of callers online. Adam Juskevich, do you have a comment?
Yeah. Hi, this is Adam Juskevich from the 4th Ward. It would be great to see this blight remediated and redeveloped. It has been crumbling and leaching chemicals into our watershed for far too long. I don't want to see this drag on for another decade or two while we try to find the money to clean it up ourselves. And I urge the city to move forward with this PUD and find a developer willing to take on the task. This plan is acceptable. If anything, I don't think the proposed redevelopment is intense enough. I would rather see a shallower setback from Washington and more height. But I think this is a reasonable compromise. I like that the flood fringe concerns are being taken into account and that we are attempting to preserve the important chimney swift habitat. I'm glad it will pay into the Affordable Housing Fund or perhaps even provide some affordable units on site, though I understand this is unlikely due to the flood fringe issues. I think it's entirely appropriate for the neighborhood, and I look forward to seeing this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi, I'm excited about this development. I hope that we can find a developer to do it soon. As long as I remember, this place has been an abandoned, boarded up building, and I've lived here since 1998, so I'm glad to see the land being put to better use to address our housing crisis. And so I want it to happen quickly, and so I hope that nobody tries to put any additional restrictions on this development. I heard some talk at the last meeting from some council members about quickly slapping on some sustainable development requirements that would make it harder and slower to find a developer. And I hope that that doesn't happen in a haphazard manner, and that we're able to get the remediation and the development done quickly. I also wanted to say that our community deserves better than to hear Holocaust denial at these city council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luis Vasquez, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you for the opportunity in Arbor City Council. I am very much in favor of redevelopment of 415 West Washington. I only wish that, yes, we could reduce the setbacks and make this project taller than what may be proposed. And yes, we do need to get this property cleaned up. And what better than to have a developer do it on their dime rather than on the city's dime. This project is long overdue, and I hope we make the best of this opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 345. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kitty Kahn. I live in the 5th Ward. I'm calling in to object to the proposed rezoning of 415 West Washington. There are many reasons why this rezoning of the site from PL, public land, to PUD, Planned Unit Development District, should be denied. The site is in a historic district, and the proposed development does not conform to the Historic District Commission guidelines. The site is in a floodplain, and our city's own stormwater expert, Jerry Hancock, Ann Arbor Stormwater and Floodplain Program Coordinator, has said nothing should be built on the site. Although our city's planners and certain members of City Council persist in saying there will be affordable housing on the site, this is not the case. Jennifer Hall, Executive Director of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, has said many times that this site will not have affordable housing. Even if there is payment in lieu, the developer will simply discount the purchase price by that amount. Also, the site is full of toxins which should be cleaned up by the city itself instead of waiting years until it is done by a developer. Clean it up now. Please do not rezone this site. It is not suited for any kind of residential development. Listen to your city experts. Take Jerry Hancock's advice. Abide by the Historic District guidelines. Don't rezone this property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534. Caller 534, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Tom Stolberg again. I spoke at the first reading and quoted some comments from parts of the UDC, or Unified Development Code, that indicate that beyond any doubt whatsoever, this application does not meet the intent of our code. I've been advised by an attorney, his opinion, that it does not meet the legal requirements of our code. So I spoke earlier about honesty, intellectual honesty, about respecting our laws, both the letter and the intent. Clearly does not respect the intent of our code, may very well not meet the letter of the law either. Especially because this is a city application, not a private developer's application. We should be holding ourselves to the standard of meeting our own laws. Additionally, the Ann Arbor Historic District guidelines have not been followed, as the previous caller said. One of the things our guidelines say is that this needs to be designed to fit in and be compatible with the contributing structures in the historic district. Presentations that were given to the Historic District Commission at working sessions, not an application that was voted on, but at working sessions, continue to show comparisons to structures off-site, outside of the district, and to non-contributing structures within the district. The guidelines are clear. Where contributing is very important and meaningful in historic district ordinances. This project needs to be designed to be compatible with the contributing structures in a historic district. Further, as was indicated by the previous caller, one of the previous callers, the affordable housing here is a phantom. This is a site that is highly desirable for luxury housing. You can see what's over at Kingsley, right next to the tracks. This is even a superior site. We're talking condos over there, 500 to 700 a foot.
30 seconds.
Price. This is going to be a luxury development. It's unlikely to be affordable housing units on site. There'll be a payment in lieu. The payment in lieu will be subtracted from the purchase price from whoever buys the project. If you own the property and do a payment in lieu, then you're actually paying the money. If you're buying the property from the city, doing the payment, you just discount that. There will be a phantom affordable housing benefit here, no real affordable housing benefit. Intellectual honesty is what I'm asking for. Thank you very much.
Time.
Thank you.
Caller AS, you have a comment?
Yes, I would like to say that I'm very happy with the things that we build in Ann Arbor to help those in need. The one thing I'm not happy that we're allowing to be built is this platform for Nazi propaganda from certain members of our population. It's embarrassingly quiet in that room when Henry, whatever his face, was openly denying the Holocaust as fascism looms over the country. We need pushback. You can use your First Amendment to tell him that he is wrong.
Excuse me, please. I'm sorry. The public hearing is for the zoning.
You can't defeat fascism by working inside the system. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 411, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mayor. This is James Demore. I live in the 3rd Ward, but I speak to you as a former member of the city's planning commission, and I was that body's representative to Allens Creek Greenway Task Force, which reviewed the potential of Allens Creek Greenway, now known as a tree line, although that's an interesting evolution. That's another convo. But it's centered around the 3 city properties at First and William, 721 North Main, and 415 West Washington. Our task force came up with 3 recommendations for the site. There was one architectural, which would be completely built upon, and the other was an open, which I'll discuss, and the other was sort of a blended emphasis. And I think the blended emphasis is what is coming before you. I understand there's some compromises and a willingness to take care of the toxic site. There's always been suspicions, and we looked at that about those issues certainly there. It's only been a past industrial area, so there's going to be some problems there. And yes, it's something that should be looked at. That being said, your staff has been emphatic about protecting natural systems. And if I'm listening to you guys talk tonight, and I'm looking at the trend, and even many of the public speakers spoke another matter, I get it. You guys are great in terms of sending a progressive message to the city. You're on board with it. You're at heart, maybe you are there. But the one thing that you really are is that you're built on development, development, development. That's great. If you want to move forward with it, that's fine. And in terms of getting a comprehensive plan, yes, we should be incorporating all voices. We'd be looking at all factors. And one thing you cannot ignore is the environment or natural systems. We need to respect our floodplains and the floodway. When I sat on the Allens Creek Greenway Task Force, I and a plurality of the members looked at the open emphasis, which was to protect our floodplain and our front bridges. And we believe that the best way for the tree line or the greenway was to use the city sites as kind of centers for a park-like system.
30 seconds.
Yes, it's going to be a circumstance where the city is going to have the burden of cleaning it up, and it's a situation that sadly is not going to go away. But it is our responsibility, and I think in the end, I think it's better. The city really needs to do a better job of protecting its natural systems. It's another conversation. By doing so, we protect the flood fringe. I don't think we should move forward with this project tonight in terms of this issue and others that people have mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ross Smith, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I'm Ross in the 5th Ward. This site is on my way to downtown, and it's quite frankly an eyesore currently. I'm strongly in favor of this change. I really can't imagine someone defending a dilapidated building and what apparently is historic car storage. I've seen all the right things from the City Council on this, and would love to see a developer fit the bill for cleaning up the site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 194, do you have a comment? Caller 194, go ahead.
Hi, this is Rita Mitchell calling from 621 5th Street. And I want to call out the initiation of the process to develop the site, which acknowledged the complexity of it, of the many 10 sites or so that the city has plans for development. And it has probably too many features that have to be adjusted for to make it such a top priority at this point. That's my opinion. My biggest concern has to do with public health and safety and the overlapping issues of the flood risk at that site, which is an unknown and mapped by FEMA floodplain and flood fringe area. And to place that in the context of climate change and our climate emergency, during which we expect more and frequent intense flood events. Keep that in mind, because what's been proposed is only what's been known to date. So we just don't know the potential for the flooding, but our stormwater manager has said that this plan is one that is opposed to the hazardous risk management plan for the city. And that makes me really concerned for safety of the potential residents at that site, as well as those who may be called into action to support them in the case of a disaster. Combined with that is the risk of contamination that we know exists. And I feel like the attention has been paid specifically to the boundaries of the site and the contamination on the site. When we know that the contamination is a subsurface area around the site in a whole neighborhood. So it's not only the contaminants on site, but the plume of PCE that's flowing in the direction of that site that hasn't been adequately addressed. We don't know what the plan will result in terms of control of the contamination over time and the control of the remediation.
30 seconds.
And that has me concerned. Thank you. Also, well, I just think that if the federal government won't give money to support affordable housing in this place because it's at risk of flooding, then I think that it's probably a risky place for any person to be living. And I support the open space approach to use of this site because it is compatible with the actual natural features of the site, which is in a floodplain on the route to the Huron River. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon Dimchef, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Brandon Dimchef again from West Larrytown in the 4th Ward. I don't have much to add in support of this that other people haven't said. I just wanted to register my support and encourage council to keep this relatively simple so that we can try to get a developer and get this stuff cleaned up as quickly as possible. Rather than setting city money on fire to do it, I would much prefer having someone else do it while we also get some housing out of the deal. So, yep, excited about this. Hope to see it proceed forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Mark Wishko. I live at 211 3rd Street. My property backs right up to 415 West Washington. I have been there for 45 years. I have watched the city neglect this site for all of those years. And what we have today is a blighted site, the responsibility of the city. And now we're going to have a development that's going to create a wall between the neighborhood and downtown. And then the city is saying, I want somebody else to pay for this because, geez, it's too expensive for us. We have neglected the site for all of these years. We have contaminated it, yet we don't want to pay for it. And we want to put people at risk by building in a floodplain? I am totally confused by this. We have the ability to be able to make this a transition from the neighborhood to downtown, not put up a wall between the neighborhood and downtown. We have a historic district that is supposed to provide that. Yet, this organization is trying to tear that down and work their way around the Historic District Commission. I'm aghast at this. This is just, to me, it's beyond comprehension that the city will neglect its own responsibility, look to put it upon a developer, and then walk away happy because, gee, we put up this big wall, we circumvented the Historic District Commission. We require all of the people that live in this historic district to abide by the Historic District Commission, right? Okay, improvements that I make on my property has to conform, yet the city is trying to circumvent those things. As you can see, I'm a little angry about this, to watch how this has just gone right along. My neighbors and I have been working for what, a year and a half to be able to bring this to our council members, to discuss this, to bring things to the table here, and what we get is this. I really would like to see this council turn around on this project. This does not belong in this neighborhood. It does not contribute to the historic houses that we live in and that have been part of our lives for many, many years. Those homes are not a commodity. They are our homes. They have been our passion for decades. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller on Zoom, and phone number ending in 556. Caller 556, go ahead.
Hi, Ralph McKee from the Fifth Ward again. I would echo the comments made by the opponents of this resolution. Many good points have been made. I think the one key one that I would like to emphasize is that can you really expect a developer to clean up anything beyond this site? It seems to me that the city is going to have to clean up the plume that surrounds this site. And how are you going to coordinate that cleanup without having control of the edges of it? Just think about that one piece alone, I think is enough to get past the temptation to just have a developer do it so the city doesn't have to pay for it. The city is, after all, responsible for it from the get. There's no question about that, zero. And the city should take some responsibility here, regardless of what the cost is. Bond it if you have to. That's what you're supposed to do. The other point that I'd like to make is that if you go back to the very beginning of this process, have been some serious misrepresentations made by certain people during the course of it. The early webinars and the early meetings and surveys had a questionnaire that asked for goals and prioritizing of those goals. The lowest priority in the entire survey, both residents nearby and citywide, the last lowest score was for selling this property in order to generate money for the Affordable Housing Fund. The bottom. Yet that has been the overriding goal. And now it's been pointed out several times that you won't even get any money for the Affordable Housing Fund because the developer will obviously just discount the purchase price by the amount that they would have to pay in. So the entire goal, which was ranked last and has been driving this bus in any way, is a phantom. And if you approve this, just with those two components, let alone Jerry Hancock saying that it shouldn't be built there, and he's the stormwater manager, et cetera, all the competing considerations that have been discussed
30
ad
seconds.
nauseum are just going to be, the competing considerations always go by the boards in order to support new market rate, i.e. luxury housing, which will not produce any improvement in affordability whatsoever. That really is no reason to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 644, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Kathy Boris. I live at 1726 Charlton. I do agree with a lot of things that previous callers have said. I want to mention two of them. One is that the Historic District guidelines should protect the neighborhood surrounding 415 Washington. The sketches that I have seen of the building proposed most recently, the building is too tall and it's too massive. This is clear. Historic District guidelines should govern in this case. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Jerry Hancock is our stormwater manager. He's our floodplain expert. 415 Washington, pretty much the whole of that lot is either flood fringe or floodway. Jerry Hancock, as Ann Arbor's expert on the floodplain, recommends that nothing be built on the site because of this. And I hope that you will please follow his advice and not rezone this lot for development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast Ann Arbor. I'm not actually a huge fan of this PUD. As proposed currently, this PUD has height limits that are far too restrictive, ridiculous setback requirements, and is just generally fairly odious. Some have suggested we make it worse. They've suggested we preserve this historic blight and pollution. Others seem to have been too busy planning their comments to pay attention to Administrator Dohoney's financial warnings to Council, as they suggest that the city could dig into its apparently unlimited coffers to remediate the pollution here. Still others, worst of all by a long shot, use public comment time tonight to repeat long debunked Nazi propaganda. So what does this mean for 415 West Washington? Well, we're in a housing crisis and we're in a Nazi propaganda crisis. Insufficient housing, far too much Nazi propaganda. Fortunately, the city can do something about at least the former. I'd love to see this PUD improved tremendously, and I think that council should tell Planning Commission to do so. Increase the height limit. Let us build something like University Plaza, or even just like the First in Washington apartments less than a block away. But please don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just pass the small improvement now, and let's improve it further later. Maybe while doing so, we should also consider whether this blighted, graffiti-covered parking lot and abandoned building are at all worth being considered historic. Ann Arbor can do better than this. Let's not cut off our noses to spite our faces by leaving it like this because we're worried that something might not be to the liking of a dozen homeowners in the area, and worry about the fact that we are in a housing crisis.
30 seconds.
Something bigger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Let's take a short break and reconvene at 10 p.m.
So I'd like to start by saying thank you and how grateful I am to all the folks who spoke at public hearing tonight and to the meetings that I've had in the past as well with residents. We heard a variety of different viewpoints on this rezoning, and this is obviously a very complex site for our community. The city vacated the property in 2007, 16 years ago. So we've been through a pretty exhaustive process to date to get us to where we're at right now. We have evaluated a variety of different proposals. We have looked at adaptive reuse. We've done studies on flooding of the site. We've put out an RFP in the past and not been able to see that move forward. And that's what's helped to inform us to where we're at today, and in taking this approach to identify what the community values are with this site, and then develop a proposal that we can go back out to the development community with those priorities, so that we can get something back that that meets our community goals and values. We heard a variety of different comments tonight but I did want to touch on a couple of them. One of which is fundamentally the fact that this is a blighted and polluted site, and that this is our site. This is a contamination that we have contributed to as a city, and that it's our duty and responsibility to clean it up, and to clean it up now. And I don't disagree with that at all. That is, it is our responsibility to do that. And as I look at this proposal before us, that's one of the reasons that helps to motivate me to believe that this is the right process for us to move forward. When we get to, I don't look at this as the city, we are as asking developers to pay for this. We will be paying for this. We would be using our brownfield, using a brownfield plan eventually to help pay for the cleanup of this. But it would be, initially, that cleanup would be paid for by private development, and would be ultimately paid back, much of it through development, through tax dollars, through that tax revenue. So what we're not doing is going to our general fund right now to clean that up. And instead, we are able to get delivered a lot of our other community priorities in the process. We're building more housing. We are protecting the chimney swifts that are there. We are identifying, we're protecting, not building in the floodplain. We are increasing our open space in that area. It's a complex site, and I know that depending on the lens through which people are looking at this, you can come to, rightfully, I think, a lot of different conclusions on this. But as a council member,
Councilmember?
I will speak to this my second time as well.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs? Or Dish.
The other one, yeah.
If you insist.
So I just wanted to remind us all that we are asked to rezone and approve for residential development a 2.5-acre site located in the Old West Side Historic District in the Allen Creek floodplain. The rezoning petition is accompanied by a concept plan for an elevated residential structure of about 134,000 square feet that will be 5 stories at its highest point. A minimum of 60% of the site is required to be preserved as open space, and the tree-lined trail will be built by the supplemental regs. It is required to be built through that space. Affordable housing is also required and must be provided, the greater of 15% or 15 units. The units may be provided on site, or a payment in lieu equivalent may be made. And we've thrown in one final requirement for good measure, which is the preservation of the chimney swift habitat. And I'm not trying to make light of habitats. I'm just trying to underscore that, yes, this is a complex site that many community values are being, have been introduced into. So yes, it is true that this site cannot be developed primarily for affordable housing, as the other city-owned sites are being developed. because we would need federal funding to subsidize such a development, and federal funding cannot be used here. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be affordable housing units on the site, or that it won't pay into our fund. Now, the cleanup will be expensive. At this stage, we only have estimates to work with, but it sounds like it's up to $1 million to deal with the contamination, double that or more to dismantle the existing asbestos-filled building, and then more to establish reasonable stormwater control. You all heard tonight Mr. Mahoney say that he left $1 million unallocated from the general fund. This cleanup would require 3 times that. And so if we were to try to fund this out of general fund funds, we would need to not do things that people urgently want us to do. You are absolutely right that this is the city's responsibility to clean up, and we are exercising that responsibility through the use of brownfield tax credits, which are designed exactly for the purposes of development and environmental cleanup, and which the city uses regularly. Finally, we've heard concern about about residential development in a floodplain. The concept plan would significantly improve the flood control that exists currently. The concept plan would remove a structure that sits below the floodplain, provide stormwater management where there currently is none at all, clean up on-site contamination and halt both the in-migration and out-migration of further contamination, significantly reduce impervious surface, and conform fully with the city's revised and strengthened floodplain ordinance, which was written by Mr. Jerry Hancock, who also wrote the hazard mitigation plan. And I think that's good enough for now, but I think there are many good reasons to approve it.
Councilmember Song.
I was looking at what brownfield projects we've already approved in the past year and trying to recall that process. We approved a brownfield development project in Carytown off of Detroit and Fifth Avenue for a 14-unit condo development, and we had, but that was after we were. A site plan was submitted and then for us to vote on whether they could use brownfield tax incentives. And then after that approval, it goes to the County Board of Commissioners and the County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. So I think we still haven't actually started that process. We're just speaking to the possibility once this is rezoned as a PUD. But I just want to point to like how we've done this pretty close to where the site is in Carytown, and we've approved a much larger brownfield project, the Sartorius Bioanalytical Instruments parcel that was off of Research Park Drive. And we were pretty comfortable with working with that project there, where we were approved $2.7 million in brownfield assistance. So if we are on this path of trying to remediate parcels so they can actually be used, I feel like this council has had the experience and understanding what that means and the impact, and knowing that this would actually bring some timeliness to the cleanup and additional dollars that can be leveraged as an additional oversight with the city and the county and the state, because we actually have to qualify under state regulations in order to capture these TIFs. So should there be some discontent about how this city council functions or reviews these projects, there are other authorities who also take a look at this too. So I just kind of want to revisit what the process is like and what we've approved in the past. Thanks.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. Looking forward to approving this tonight. It's been a blighted site for as long as I've lived in Ann Arbor, which is over 20 years. I did want to speak, I guess, to something that hasn't really been spoken directly to at the table yet, which is about this being in the Old West Side Historic District. And I want to point out that in the PUD that is before us, it says that the development is within the Old West Side Historic District and shall meet all relevant requirements. The supplemental regulations do not supersede the historic district regulations, nor do they preclude the development from meeting those regulations. I'd also like to point people to an addition that was made to our packet of materials for this site earlier today, and that is a letter from the Historic District Commission, where they say at the very top of the letter, they're pleased to see progress on the redevelopment of this site. Despite its challenges, it has great potential as a setting for a project that is positive for the neighborhood, downtown, and future residents. They go on to talk about, what concerns concerns that they would have. They note that what they, reviewed before them is not, a final site plan. It is a schematic, and they talk about some of the things that they would be looking for in their review of the site, like setbacks, et cetera. So I just wanted to point people to that. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Cornell.
Thanks to Councilmember Ekman, who pointed out that memo from the Historic District Commission. I think it's really important that we do point out that there were some assertions made that these decisions are being made without their input and sort of to skirt around them when that is just not the case. And I think that, the fact that they're looking forward to working to advance their goals alongside the redevelopment of this process or this project, this parcel, is really important. This is how government should work. We should be collaborating along those lines, and so I'm excited about that. I think the one thing that I wanted to address as well was, some idea that developing this property would somehow separate, that neighborhood from downtown. I guess what I see it doing is advancing the tree line trail, specifically that connects Liberty and Washington Street, which is currently walking through there every single day. I wish that there was a path there, and that there would be a minimum of 60% open space on that site, which I know we heard, to Councilmember Briggs' point, both pros and cons around the lens at which, with which we look at these, but gaining that open space without pollution on that site is something I think, I'm excited about. And certainly seeing that we're working towards incorporating the tree line trail into this, I think that that's an important way to actually connect our neighborhood to downtown and to a broader set of trails that are really useful to the community. So I will be supporting this.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks, and thanks to my colleagues for adding in many of the other comments that I was interested in saying. One thing that I spoke to at the last meeting, however, was there's one element that it has not been incorporated into this proposal yet. Obviously, our city has declared a climate emergency, and it's important that I believe that it's important that when we're going out with a development proposal on a city-owned site, that we would communicate our climate priorities with this as well. So I have sent around a proposed amendment that I'd like to move to amend the ordinance by adding the following to the 415 West Washington PUD supplemental regulations, Section 4 PUD regulations, with a subsection G entitled Building Sustainability. Any building shall be designed in a manner to be considered at minimum net zero ready as determined by the Office of Sustainability and Innovation prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Ekman. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. So I worked with staff to develop this. Obviously, we don't know what kind of development is going to be proposed, and so in terms of actually providing specific elements, defining exactly what we mean is very difficult at this stage in the game, but what I do think is important is that we would go out to the development community with an expectation of the type of building that we would like to see back. So net zero ready certainly indicates to the development community that we're looking for a highly energy efficient building and a building that could be converted to net zero in the future. Hopefully we'll have a lot of competitive responses to this, and folks may provide us more than net zero ready, but the Office of Sustainability would be reviewing this. So I'm hopeful that there's support for this evening.
Is that amendment friendly to the body? It's friendly. Further discussion of the main motion is amended. For my part, I am delighted that this is indeed moving forward. The site has been blighted for years, and there have been, as previously articulated, a number of efforts to address it. Those efforts have, faltered on the shoals of the site. It is a particularly complex location for a variety of reasons. The current plan, in my view, holds a great deal of promise, and I'm excited that we are moving it forward today and believe that it has a real shot at accomplishing a wide variety of our goals for the betterment of the community. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Section 263 of Chapter 29 Water Rates of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of C1. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C2, an ordinance to amend Section 269 of Chapter 29 Stormwater Rates of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of C2. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to approve amendments to the council rules. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Redina.
I'll speak very briefly to these. I was not actually at the meeting where these were voted out of admin, but I know that as somebody who requested the city attorney to look at them, some of these are relatively, the process changed, allowing us to postpone items relevant to or specific to a meeting in the future, which I know was a question in the past, and then also allowing us to group together items of similar content in the future so that we're more respectful of the community's time when they come out to these meetings and participate, so that when they are here to speak, they can actually see us take action on those items as well. So I'm looking forward to supporting these.
Further discussion? Councilmember Watson.
I just want to thank City Attorney Cower for her work on this. It was her new perspective actually that called to our attention that we actually need to be able to specify that we can postpone an item for multiple meetings or to a specific date. We had kind of been operating on a, we hadn't specified that we were able to do that. And then we've seen in the past, we've seen that sometimes agenda items will cross over, and so when there's public comment or public hearing on them, we'd like to hear it kind of all at once rather than kind of cutting people off midway through something because they're commenting on, say, the zoning portion rather than the site plan, et cetera. So just once again, thank you to the Attorney's Office for the work on this, and I'll be supporting it.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
We do not.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Redina, second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Are there communications from our city attorney?
No, thank you, Mayor.
There is no public comment overflow, and so may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.